If you are a midlife woman or you're coming up on this powerful season of growth, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to Unraveling Together. I'm Samantha Graber, also known as Dr. Sam, seasoned holistic health physician and woman in the midst of midlife's unraveling. Unraveling Together is the place to talk about the things we just don't talk about, but so desperately need to as women. Together, we untangle ourselves from our pasts and weave a beautiful web for a future we so deeply desire to bring to life. Grab a cup of chai, tea, water, or joe, and let's get to it. Let's channel our inner artists a little today. Draw in your mind's eye a big circle. Now, this represents a typical cell in the human body. This big circle separates the inside from the outside of the cell. This circle is called the membrane. It should be porous and pliable, meaning it should have the ability to let the good things in as well as usher the waste out. The membrane should keep out all the stuff that it's supposed to keep out, all while having a little give to it. In other words, it has to be sort of squishy, like a slightly underfilled water balloon. Now imagine that circle in 3D. It is now a big sphere. All along this membrane, you'll find gatekeepers called receptors. Now, they are like locks that need a unique key to be opened, therefore allowing things in and out of the cell through a portal. Now, there are somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, like a bazillion of them. Seriously, there are so many. It is worse than traffic on the freeways of Atlanta. Good grief, driving in Atlanta is ridiculous. Have you been there? Don't do it unless you're used to it. But unlike Metro Atlanta traffic, where you're pretty free to get on and off the road where you choose, as long as you're in the correct lane, and my gosh, you better be in the correct lane. They will let you know you are not. So the in and out traffic of a human cell is heavily regulated. When it comes to these receptors, they will open only when the correct key is used. In other words, when the correct substance enters the receptor, in turn allowing the good stuff into the cell through the portal or the waste to exit, depending on the particular receptor's job. It is such a specific orchestration of metabolic perfection until it gets screwed up. Now, this screwing up of the system can happen as a result of many different problems. Bottom line, when the bad stuff accumulates and cannot get out of the cell, and or the good stuff cannot get into the cell, allowing it to work properly, we have a problem. Remember, the body wants to effectively do its job, and it will do whatever it has to do to protect our brain without sacrificing our life and death parts. Fat is the most logical place to put all the junk that backs up in the system, in part because it isn't all that discriminatory. For more detail on that particular fact of what our body does with body fat, how it's a buffer for our system, refer back to episode number 30. Here's the deal. An adipose cell or fat cell is a terrible bouncer for the body. To entertain myself, I like to create conversation amongst the players in the metabolic game. So here's toxin 1 and adipose cell, and then toxin 2 is going to come in just a moment. Toxin number 1, hey man, I'm on the list. Adipose cell, oh, you look nice, come on in. Here comes toxin number 2, hey man, what about me, can I get in? Adipose cell, sure, you've got on my favorite color, go on in. Seriously, fat is a terrible doorman. It's like having a golden retriever as a guard dog. Can I show you where to keep the good stuff? We'll work for treats and belly rubs, right? So I hope this is making sense and curling up the ends of your mouth to boot. I do this for my own entertainment, and if you get a chuckle out of it, that is a bonus in my book. We can start the healing process, in essence, cleaning up the metabolic mess, with the following 4 actions. Think of them as moving parts, like cogs in the machine. Each is helpful on its own, but when working in tandem, oh, we really get somewhere, baby. Yeah, right? So please note, you can start doing every single one of these now. No need to wait for a special occasion or the first of the month or the first of the year, right? No waiting 11 months, y'all. Put a plan in place and get to work. Number 1, cut down on the body's exposure to glucose. In other words, lower the carbage, also known as all things carbs. Glucose is a heavily regulated substance in the body. Your body wants only about 1 teensy tiny teaspoon of glucose in the blood at any given time. All excess needs to go somewhere, and it is toxic at high levels, as mentioned previously. Now, when you eat carbs, whether simple or complex, they all turn to glucose along with some other OSAs. And glucose signals insulin to rise, in turn ushering glucose into the cells or anywhere else it can shove it when it needs to. Excess glucose starts a process that damages the cellular membrane, in turn making the cells sick. All cells are fair game, even your brain cells. Number 2, change your oils and fats. Stop eating canola, soybean, any seed oil really. And for the so-called vegetable oils, you'll be hard pressed, pun intended, to find anything that resembles a vegetable in the stuff labeled vegetable oil. You've got to get rid of these highly processed oils. Do not use them for anything. Read labels like your life depends on it, because it does. If you eat processed foods, anything from a box, a pouch, bag, found on a shelf, basically, stop buying brands with these junk oils in them. There is work to do here. These oils are in everything that has a shelf life. Same for sweeteners and colors and flavors. Nothing natural about these things, even if it has the word natural on the label. It's just marketing. If you're eating the junk oils, the membrane starts to inflame. It becomes rigid and it therefore won't be able to do its job. Remember, we want a pliable membrane like the underfilled water balloon to help usher the good stuff in and the waste out of the cell. A pliable membrane is a key factor in this process, working at its best. Number 3, look to where you are being exposed to toxins. Start with pesticides. Where can you go organic? Pesticides gunk up the receptor sites, especially the endocrine receptors. Even better than just organic is to look into regeneratively raised food. These are the 4 foundational principles of regenerative agriculture, and an insight as to why I am such a huge advocate for eating animals and plants that have been regeneratively raised. We minimize the soil disturbance, cover the soil at all times, livestock grazing management. This is the key, alternating the type of livestock over the land in a sequence that works best with nature. Also, crop diversity. As my main soil man, Will Harris over at White Oak Pasture says, nature abhors a monoculture. He says it much better. I love his accent. Can you see why I'm such a fan, not just of Will's, but of the whole regenerative movement? It's allowing nature to do her thing by not trying to force her to bend to our agricultural will. That is the best way by which to grow real food that nourishes us, our animals, and the planet, most notably her soil. In addition to what you put in your body, let's look to what you put on your body. What is in your beauty and personal care products? A simple way to determine what is okay and what is wreaking havoc is to download the EWG's Healthy Living App. EWG is the Environmental Working Group. It's a US-based nonprofit. So when you download this, you scan your products. They walk you through the entire process. I'll have a link in the notes here for you today as well. So everything that you put on your skin, on your hair, on your teeth, on your nails, etc., scan it and sort it by rating. You may be floored as to how dirty your personal care and beauty products really are. I am always recommending non-toxic, environmentally friendly products in my ecosystem. I even make a few myself and I show you how to do it in the Unraveling Together community. Super simple and worth the effort. Another way we're exposed to ungodly amounts of toxins is from our food and drink. Consider the following. How is it packaged? Think single-use plastic. How is it processed? How many words have no vowels and numbers with some commas? Think chemicals. How will you prepare the food? Rule number 1 of Fight Club. Well, Metabolism Club. Never mind, I'll work on that. But never microwave in plastic. Never. So from the pan to the serving and the storing dishes, everything that touches your food and drink matters. Of note is the fact that what is done to your food prior to it being packaged does not make it to the label. Think about that fact. If something is chemicalized to death to extract what you'll be ingesting, think vegetable oil, those extractive chemicals never make their way to the label. Ever seen hexane on a nutrition facts label? No, me neither. And by the way, hexane is a solvent made from refining crude oil, just like the gasoline you put in your car. Here's some intel on that process straight from the council's mouth. I'll have a link to the Canola Council of Canada, how canola becomes oil and meal products. Riveting reading, y'all. They get right to it in the beginning, though. You don't have to read the whole thing and get into all the super science nerdy stuff like I like to do. But you'll be amazed. And this stuff is out there for public consumption. I don't have like special access to, investigative reporting or anything. I just look online. And as always, I follow the money. I look to see who's sponsoring the research. Those are ways that you can do your own due diligence. Your body and your brain will thank you. Another question to ask yourself, do you drink out of single-use plastic water bottles? The noisy, squishy plastic? Is there a thin lining in your canned foods? For example, canned tomato products are sold in BPA plastic-lined cans. That's bisphenol A, the BPA. They're put in those cans because the tomatoes will react with the metal when that BPA plastic is not there. Look up BPA. Again, bisphenol, I think it's BISPHENOLA. Okay, look that up. Bottom line, these plastics compete with the metabolic keys in our cells. Remember the receptor locks on your cellular membranes? These plastics compete with the keys to cause the cell to become sick. Another word for this is endocrine disruptor. They'll cause that cell to turn toxic and your body will store the toxic fallout in your fat. This is how the body walls off the life and death organs from toxins. It stores toxins in our fat. Cog number 4, avoid frankenfood, which is basically almost anything that has been processed. In other words, if your food is sold in a form that it was not grown in, example, mashed, grated, shredded, chopped, juiced, cut, sliced, etc., something was done to your food after it was picked or slaughtered. In other words, it was processed. Now, not all processing is bad. Just the stuff done in a lab or most factories. Being an informed consumer will help you distinguish the good from the bad. Here's a perfect place for one of my favorite Dr. Sam-isms. The longer the shelf life of your food, the shorter yours. If you can leave some item that you buy on a shelf somewhere in your kitchen for weeks, months, heck, years, there's some chemical added to it. It has no business being eaten. Just stop it. If your food can't spoil, there's no food in your food, period. Real food goes bad. Processed food can resist the rot for way longer than what is natural. Remember that conversation around the McDonald's hamburger that showed no sign of decay after years, I think it was? I do. I never eat that stuff, by the way. The crap that is in our processed food gunks up these receptor sites, wreaking havoc on the cells, in turn, making you sick. Sick cells equate to an ill you. Here's the acronym CRAP. Think of this when you're shopping. C for chemicals that your grandparents wouldn't have in their own kitchen. R for refined sugar and grains. A, artificial colors, flavors, sweeteners, etc. P, processed in any way. If it has a label on it, it is suspect. Choose foods that were on the plant, not made in one, and choose foods that were swimming, walking, slithering, or flying in the not too distant past. Meat should rot if it's been meat, no longer alive, for a while. In review, here are the 4 moving cogs in the machine. Number 1, cut down the body's exposure to glucose. You know the deal. Look to your carbs for this one. Breads, grains, sweets, alcohol, frankenfruit, modern fruit, which is off the chart sweet, and pasta, you know that. All those things, if you wonder, I wonder what Dr. Sam would say. Probably, I would say, don't eat that. Number 2, change your oils and fats. Number 3, look to where you are being exposed to toxins. Remember your beauty care products, your personal care products, and download that app. Again, I'll have a link down in the notes for you. And then number 4, avoid frankenfoods. In other words, stop eating crap. This is how you start to heal your cells. It's a process. It's a lengthy process. It is not an overnight thing by any stretch of the imagination, and you cannot substitute any of these steps with a detox program that you buy from your neighbor. Just as toxins accumulate, causing a negative, their removal adds up to create a positive effect on the overall system that is you, HQ. When your cells are healing and that tipping point starts to correct itself, your body is now free to flip its fuel switch in order to burn that fat instead of using it as a toxic waste dump. And when you go low enough on the sugar or carb continuum, you force your metabolic engine to burn fat in lieu of the sugars and carbs that were once so easily available. It is a brilliant biohack. So your body is designed to burn fat. In fact, it wants to burn fat. But as stated earlier, your body has to be able to release that fat because it no longer needs to cling to it as a buffer between life and death stuff, your brain, your heart, your lungs, and the amassing toxic waste dump. This is why we start here, cleaning up the metabolic mess. If you don't clean up the environment, you cannot truly rebuild your metabolism. We'll talk about some other ways you can stack the metabolic deck in your favor in midlife as we continue along this conversation. Remember, we're not going for skinny. We're going for longevity and feeling fan-freaking-tastic. If you want to plug into my ecosystem and potentially explore working together, subscribing to my YouTube channel is a great place to start. Be sure to hit the bell so you're notified when I add new videos. Until we meet again, take good care of yourself and each other. Thank you for joining me on the Unraveling Together podcast. I'd love to turn this thing we've got into a dialogue. Follow me on LinkedIn at Dr. Sam Graber, where we can have conversations about all things midlife, perimenopause, and finding meaning through it all. If you want a deeper dive into exploring your midlife experience, consider joining the Unraveling Together community of rebellious midlife women. It is there that we roll up our sleeves and do the work. Unraveling Together is a resource hub, roadmap, and online coaching community curated by yours truly. We are navigating this time called midlife together, for we truly believe we are stronger together. And when unravelers are in need of an assist, they have all of us there alongside them.